Thank you, Ryan, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I really want to introduce you. Many of you have been doing premium financing with us in the past and recently, but I wanted to introduce you to a new concept that we've just tied in with it. And I like to call this retirement planning on steroids. Most of business owners today and executives and doctors, they always are wondering what are they going to do with their the remaining amount of savings. How can they build a retirement plan? Do they have enough money to get there? Many times they find out at the end they just don't have the money that they need, and they wonder what else can they do. Well, with this new Kaizen plan that we have available for you to take a look at today, we'll show you how you can help your clients build their retirement plan on steroids. What I'd like everybody to do, if you have any questions today, there is a chat box. You can leave the message in the chat box at the bottom, and we'll try to answer it at the end of the day, at the end of this period. If we're running late, longer, we're grinding out, be happy to answer for you. I'd like to introduce to you at this time Kyle, and I'm not sure, Kyle is one of our partners in the advanced planning arena in this space of retirement planning, and I'm not sure if Travis is with us today. And he's and I will want to introduce everyone to you on Travis, because Travis will work with you very diligently in the retirement planning through Kaizen. So at this time, let's turn this over to Kyle and let him kick it off. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Ryan and Barry, for your time today. And so we're going to jump right in. First of all, can everybody hear me okay? Just kind of a quick thumbs up. There we go. Awesome. So what we're going to do is just kind of keep this high level. We're really just going to introduce the concept, and we're going to do that by actually framing out what the conversation looks like, excuse me, with prospects and current clients. So we're calling this, labeling it retirement planning for high-income households. If you'd like a copy of this slide presentation, you can reach out to Ryan after the call. All right, so let me make sure. Here we go. So this is the client presentation that we use to kind of segue into the conversation that's really going to pick up speed when we move over to the online tool that we're going to show. What this is just kind of framing out, how long it is that we're going to be talking and kind of living within PowerPoint, but this is our discussion outline. 15 to 20 minutes is kind of recommended for a prospect or a client. With you all, I'm going to keep this pretty high speed and low drag just so that we can get into the meat of the presentation. So we're going to talk about rate of return versus savings rate, defined benefit to a 401k. We're going to address various risks. Hang on, I've got somebody else joining the meeting. We're going to go through an exercise on if we could design the ideal retirement plan, what would that look like? And what features and benefits would we want to include inside of it? We're also going to have a quick overview on utilizing leverage in a correct way. And then finally, we're going to estimate benefits. And this is where, again, kind of keep in mind, I'm going to give this presentation as if you were giving it to a client. So this is where we're going to estimate your benefits, show you kind of where the rubber hits the road, how this would actually work for you. And if you're interested, we can make this tool available to you. All right, so there was a Charles Schwab study done several years ago that basically states that spending 80% of your pre-retirement income in retirement is a reasonable assumption. I believe that was done back in 2007, and the numbers are still accurate today. Now, people work for two reasons. These aren't any groundbreaking reasons for anybody on the call, but one is to have create a standard of living while working, and the other is to maintain that standard of living throughout retirement. Now, what determines how much you have to spend in retirement? This is pretty eye-opening. This was a study done by Principal a few years ago. 26% of your success is going to be based on your investment return and asset allocation. 74% is going to be based on how much you save. So with most of the financial industry focusing on 26%, we're going to talk about the full 100 today. But we're really going to address this 74% of the problem that traditional advice does not adequately address. So it's how much you invest, it's not where. Your real issue is not where do I put my money? The real issue is where do I get more money? So where is our firm different, right? You can kind of envision yourself kind of setting yourself apart. We're going to help you save more money without altering today's lifestyle. Now, historically, employees work for a company for 30 to 40 years. Now these days are long gone, and they didn't do this just for an altruistic love of the company that they were working for. They did it due to this. They had defined benefit plans. They knew at every age what they would have to retire on. Now, these went away with the introduction of the 401k in 1978. That shifted the liability of employees saving for retirement from the employer to the individual plan participant. Not saying that 401ks are bad, but for our target audience that this strategy fits for, it's not enough to address 74% of their problem. They can't get enough money into these, so they have to look elsewhere. Now let's go through a few different risks that we're going to address and that this platform and this solution will actually take care of. So the first is market risk. If you've been in the market for any time, this is nothing new. We're all familiar with it. But how do you adequately address it as you're saving for retirement and then as you're on the downward slope of pulling income? Tax risk. Okay, so the Trump tax cuts were set to expire January 1, 2026. With the new administration, that's probably going to be a little bit sooner. We will see. But I think where we can all agree with record debt, unfunded government programs, where will tax rates go? Most likely up. And the third risk is one that not any other financial firm is actually going to talk about because they don't have a solution for it, but that's capital risk. Will you actually have the ability to fully fund your retirement while you're working? That's a big question. That's something that keeps a lot of people up at night. They might be doing well now, but what if something happens? We're going to address that. All right, so this is kind of the create your own retirement plan exercise, right? And so everybody will have time to go through this individually. Everything's animated, of course. I'm going to go through this a little quickly, much more quickly with you all on the phone to get in again to the meat of it. But typically, all down the yes column, everybody's going to, you're going to kind of guide them on each of these items. Would you like it deductible, tax deferred growth, tax-free income? It's nothing really eye-opening. They want all these things, right? So what we're going to talk about today is going to, kind of the spoiler alert, have everything except the first one. And we'll get into why it's not going to be deductible and why we highly recommend that you don't do that in just a minute. But we will have tax deferred growth. We will have tax-free income, which is going to eliminate that first risk, tax risk that we mentioned prior. We will have a market-driven rate of return, safety with no downside interest rate risk, which is going to eliminate market risk. Cash in the event of a death or illness, that's included in the plan. And it's a big one because they state that 75% of all bankruptcies are due to a death or illness. And then matching funds. We'll have this as well, but we're not talking about 3% match up to 6% of your salary. We're actually talking about 3 to 1. Okay, so that'd be a 300% match. This last one is going to eliminate capital risk, and we'll get into exactly why here in just a few minutes. Now, what we call this program is Kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese term. It was used in manufacturing. It's used in Six Sigma, but it just means continual improvement. All right, so leverage, we addressed that was one of the bullet points. Here's a quick overview before we go into the online system of how leverage works inside of this plan. Let's say you're the client, your contribution is the green dollar sign, and then we have a lender on the back of this that's going to match your contribution in year 1, and we're going to repeat this. Let's say that we're putting in $20,000 a year. The bank's going to put in $20,000 a year as well. All right, we've got somebody else joining. And we're going to repeat this years 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you've got $20,000 going in, the bank's matching it. So we've got $40,000 a year going into the plan. Where this really starts to get interesting is that by the end of year 5, your client is done. No more contributions could be made even if they wanted. They can always start a second plan, but they can't contribute to this anymore. due to the way that it's funded. What happens is the bank will contribute their original starting contribution as well as the client's contribution in years 6 all the way through 10. At this point in the presentation, most clients will kind of step back. Most prospects will look at this and say, I've never heard of anything like this. And I would challenge the fact that they have. If we actually look at this, not to spoil my slide coming up, but this looks very similar to a mortgage. Most people's largest expense, largest individual purchase is their home. And the question would be, did they take out a mortgage or did they pay cash for their home? Most people took out a mortgage, and we'll go through an example on why in just a minute. But in this example, we have essentially the client putting in 25% of the funds with the bank putting in 75%. Only 5 annual contributions are required by the client. Now we have all of this without the typical risks of borrowing. This is key. There are no interest payments, no loan documentations, credit checks, personal guarantees, outside collateral, not even a signature. And I'll address some questions at the end on how that takes place. Now, I kind of mentioned that this is something that everybody on the call is familiar with. So here's a quick example. Here's why people utilize leverage in real estate and why we think they should in their retirement accounts as well, if done correctly. If you have $200,000, did you buy the home on the left, or did you put the $200,000 down and get the home on the right? Now, I don't know anybody that lives in these modern homes, but they didn't do it just for the aesthetics of the home and to have a nice swimming pool. Let's look at the financial effect of what took place. If we look at a 10% increase in value over any period of time, the end result is this. The person on the left would have made $20,000. The person on the right that used bank money would have made $100,000. And that's the end result of why people like leverage in real estate. We're just going to offer them a different option. All right, so I am done with the PowerPoint. Let me transition this over. Let's see here, new share. And here. All right. Ryan, are you seeing the ILIA platform?
I am, yes.
Perfect. Okay. So this is where we can help, really kind of condense the sales cycle when we're talking about premium finance. In the past, you had to get the illustration, you were showing the clients, an IUL proposal as well as the financing proposal, answering questions, numerous questions on both sides of the equation there. This is going to speed that up and make it to where it's much easier for them to digest. This is something that you can actually invite them to, and everything that I'm going to show you is client approved. So what I typically recommend doing is we're going to go ahead and play. Let's see, how am I doing on time? Okay, I think we're good so far. So I'm going to play this 3-minute and 15-second video for everybody. Since we're connected to audio, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. No? Okay. I'll send the video and a link where you can watch it, but I recommend it when you have access to this, play it so that the prospect can actually hear it, be connected to audio. I'm not sure why it's not playing. It really sets the stage and piggybacks on what we went through in the PowerPoint, but it's going to introduce the fact that the tool that we're using for this is cash value life insurance. So that's going to be the first time that they're going to hear this. At the end of this, it's going to go through the 3-to-1 leverage, the fact that the bank's putting in 75% of the funds and the client's putting in 25. And here's where this really picks up speed. Estimating benefits. So this is what's going to keep you out of the proposal safari. We'll say we've got a 45-year-old, and I'm going to do the minimum contribution of $21,350. All right, so years 1 through 5, the client's putting in $21,350. Years 6 through 10, the bank's going to pick that up and put in the full amount. The client's total is $106,750. The lender's going to put in $320,000 for a total of $427,000. Here's what this means to the client. At age 45, that's going to start them off with a death benefit of $871,000. We have annual income from 65 to 90 in the amount of 47,373. Here's our cumulative distributions from income as it relates to income from the policy. And then even a remaining death benefit at age 90, after the bank loan has been paid off, after they've taken income, there's still going to be a death benefit paid to the heirs, to the beneficiaries. At any point that somebody says, and this happens a lot in presenting this way, the client will say, well, wait a minute, I can do a lot more than $21,000. What does $50,000 look like? We recalculate, and it's right there. So the income went from 47,000 to 116. The death benefit went from 817 to 2.1. You can see the cumulative distributions as well as the remaining death benefit. Typically, what people like to do, if this is just off center from what they're comfortable or used to looking at, is let's compare it to alternatives that they're familiar with. So down here, highlighted in blue, we have the Kaizen plan. In the next column, we have just a basic self-pay IUL, and we've got an after-tax investment and then a tax-deferred. So you can see the income across the top line. Total distributions is line 2. Internal rate of return, this is including paying the bank back. Okay, so this is if we strip out the bank loan repayment and only did an internal rate of return on the client's money only, it's sky high. The big thing is how good do we need to make it look? And then, of course, with Kaizen and just the self-pay, we have the initial death benefit and remaining, where the after-tax or tax-deferred do not. All right. So at this point, what we typically recommend, so again, this is all stuff that the client will be able to go through and kind of play around with themselves. They can look at different things such as, what is it that they're currently worried about? What's on their mind? I need more choices for where to put my money. It's just going to talk about the obstacle that they have and the solution as far as what Kaizen provides. Here we have what I recommend the prospect is that they now want to take it a step further. How does this work? Click on the How It Works tab. 2-minute and 45-second video. It's going to get them up to speed very, very quickly. If you want to take a little bit more in-depth approach, I recommend going through these 3 bullet points, which we'll do now. All right, so the product, this is going to be very fast. Everybody on the call is familiar with IUL. So we're basically highlighting both sides of the coin here, the expense side as well as the cash side. What's actually taken place. We have the way that the indexing feature works with the annual reset. Most prospects for this are not the type of people that have sat through any type of dinner seminar, or they've never entertained the fixed indexed annuity. They typically think of index funds, not indexing. So it's a good graphic to kind of take them through to make sure that you're on the same page. And we have more information on caps as well as the floor feature within the policy. So these next 2 are my favorite. This is where everything works. So years 1 through 5, both parties contributing. Years 6 through 10, bank contribution only. Again, there's no interest payments, no loan docs, credit checks, outside collateral, or personal guarantees. And typically you'll get the question, what's the risk? What's the catch? Seems too good to be true. Why haven't I heard of this? Those are the most common questions. One of the risks to the clients, and I tell this to people, right here, one of your largest risks is an inability to complete the funding. So we want to make sure that it's something that you're comfortable with. Okay. If something happened and they had to bail out, we can go through another webinar at a later point to kind of go through a lot of those components. But they need to understand the use of borrowed money. It is, what's in it for the bank. The interest rate is at LIBOR plus a 1 3/4 bank spread. LIBOR fluctuates. The 1 3/4 to the bank is fixed. All right. And then here's just kind of a graphic that's taken them through in real time. Once again, Years 1 through 5, both parties. 6 through 10, only the bank. We're going to let the policy build up cash value, have a loan repayment from policy cash values back to the bank in year 15, at which time they can sit back and start taking an income. They can defer it out. You know, the policy is theirs at this point. All right. And risks. So when I switch over to risks, this has nothing to do with the inputs that we put in the prior page. It's just a static example that we're going to go through. Every single policy is going to go through this exercise at least 16 times. Once when they take it out and they go through underwriting before they decide that they want to enroll in the program. And then at each policy anniversary. And the two different stress tests that we take it through are the 1980s interest rates, because people always have a question about what happens if interest rates soar. So we're going to use real data from the 1980s, and we're just going to repeat that out to age 90. The next period is we're going to use the Great Depression returns. So we're highlighting each of these periods because they're actual data, we have the information, and the other component is each of them lasted for 15 years. So if we self-funded an IUL and we could expect $26,000 of income, using Kaizen, we could get about 76. Now, if interest rates soared in the 1980s, I think the highest interest rate was 16.6% that you would pay. There's not that large of an effect on the income. You know, most people think it would just utterly tank, and it doesn't. It holds very, very well because interest rates and caps coincide. You know, if the interest rates are higher, the bond yields are going to be higher on the general account for the insurance company's portfolio, so caps will increase. The Great Depression is really where there's going to be a larger hit to income. But if we look at this and keep it in perspective, hopefully everybody's seeing where I'm going with this. If we stress test the worst case scenario, the Great Depression returns, this is 9 years out of 15. We are crediting zero interest to the policy. And it is still beating what the client can do by themselves in the best case. That's huge. So now, and I'm not going to get it, we could, you know, segue into this AG 49A. We won't, we can save that for another call. But really, this is the way that IUL, you know, should be presented all the time, kind of showing the various ranges of income under different circumstances. And here we've done it in a way that is pretty much a no-brainer. I think everybody could probably agree. So that's kind of the way that we go through the risk component. And again, every policy individually is taken through this calculation, so they have their own numbers. All right. And lastly, plan details, right? So hopefully the whole idea is to get people to the point where they say, hey, you know, Ryan, this looks great. What's next? So here's how we kick this off. The first thing that we have to do is determine the contribution amount. That's going to allow us to complete the paperwork to go through the medical underwriting with the carrier. That's what this system is designed for. And I should have made mention, we call this ILIA, short for Interactive Learning and Information Assistant. That's kind of a mouthful. ILIA is really the tool that helps us get on the same page with that prospect and client regarding what that contribution amount needs to be. Once we know that, paperwork's easy to complete. Once we get the medical offer, that's when the formal illustration is put together. That's what you'll review with your client. They're still going to have to, you know, we're still going to have to review the carrier illustration as well as the finance illustration. We do that once we actually have the offer from the carrier. Now we're dealing with absolutes. So here's where it goes a little bit sideways from what we might be, you know, if you're familiar with premium finance, this is nothing new. If you're not, this might be new information. So in order to be able to protect not just the client, but the bank, the policy has to be owned by an asset protected and bankrupt remote entity, creditor proof. And that happens to be a Nevada trust. For that reason, all applications, regardless of where you are and where the client may be, are taken in Nevada. Okay, that is where Provident Trust, who's the trustee, is going to sign off on everything. Provident Trust will then establish a trust bank account for your client. Once that account is established, that is where the lender deposits their funds, and then they're remitted to the insurance company. The policy is issued and assigned to the policy is assigned to the lender. So what takes place is once that bank loan is repaid, the client can keep the funds inside of the trust account. They can move it to their own trust. They can assign it to themselves individually, but until that bank loan is repaid, the policy is going to be inside of that Nevada trust. They can go through at this point, and I'm sorry, one more thing I forgot to mention. The reason that we saw a $21,350 annual contribution is the only additional expense aside from the premium that they're putting in is the client pays Provident Trust Group a $1,350 fee for 5 years. That's an annual fee for 5 years, and then they're done. And that's just simply for Provident Trust to establish, do all the work on setting up the account, getting the trust, making sure that the trust is established, setting up the bank accounts, as well as the reporting to the client. And so from here, the client can go through, they can listen, hear from various experts, they can watch videos, they can hear from clients, different plan participants, executives that are in the program, or they can read what people are saying as well. I know that's loading a little slowly. There's also a frequently asked question section. Bank loans, contributions, various what if, distributions, policy loans, huge repository of information that's really good for everybody on the call to go through, because the clients will have these questions. So it's good to just kind of read through it and make sure that that everybody kind of understands exactly what's taking place here. All right, let me see. So we're at almost 30 minutes.
But let's just say you have a couple making husband and wife total 200 grand. Would like 20,000 come from with a $40,000 a year contribution, which 20,000 coming? Well, you said 25% of the premium. So if they put in 15,000 hypothetically, then the company would premium finance the other 75%. What's kind of a dollar figure that you guys are looking for, Kaizen's looking for?
Yeah, the minimum contribution is $21,350. So that's the
from the customer.
Correct.
But the $1,000 is going to be the same. The $1,300 with Provident Trust is going to be the same, regardless of the size of the case.
That's it. Correct.
Okay.
Thanks, John. All right, Kyle, I appreciate it. If there's any other questions, we can take them right now. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up. If you guys want access to the ILIA software, please reach out to Barry Wilkin or Ryan Wilkin. Our phone number here in the office is 951-541-2684. Again, give us a call. I think you will love using this ILIA software. It's a great client forward-facing presentation that really simplifies these IUL sales. Other than that, Kyle, I appreciate it, buddy, and you can go ahead and end the meeting.